I'm joined by some great guests this morning, Helen and Joe Owens. I'm sorry, and they are in an interesting business. They help deal with hair loss, especially for women. I want to welcome both of you. Helen, I've just got to ask you, what got you involved in the business of dealing with, and I know what a touchy issue that is. I mean, and it's not just for women; it's for men as well. It's become a fairly big business. What got you involved?
Well, I was actually what got me very strongly involved. I was actually 14 years old when I first experienced hair loss. Basically, I didn't know anything about what I had and hadn't found out what it is that I was going through until I found out that my mother has alopecia and that hereditarily I developed that disorder. As a 14-year-old, just waking up one day and brushing through your hair and watching it all come out, you can imagine. Not only watching it all come out, but being 14, it was devastating. Um, I think from that point, I always had a knack for hair. And so what I started doing to cover the bald spots was to cut my mother's wigs, and she wore wigs to cover the bald spots. And come to find out when I had a good conversation with her is that she had alopecia for about 14 years herself, but she had never let me know. So I just think it's like one of those things. It's like a big lottery in the family. You don't know who's going to end up with it. So I was, out of six kids, I was the only one that developed it.
Okay. And Joe, what prompted you to jump into the business with your sister?
Well, I think lottery, uses the word lottery to describe who gets affected by the disease and who doesn't. That's a really good way of describing it. I think what happened with me is that having grown up watching the experiences that she went through, I mean, when you're 14, you're in high school, grade school, that sort of thing, and your hair's starting to come out, you're somewhat of an anomaly, and that's putting it lightly. So I'm watching all of the stuff that my sister's going through, and I think what I wanted to do was be able to give her something back in terms of my skill set, in terms of the things that I knew, and also be able to bring my personal experiences to the table. And I watched really closely how many people my sister was able to help, and spent many years in Silicon Valley, and then said, you know what, I've got something a lot more important that I could be doing with my life. So I came on board to help her.
Let's talk about this a little bit because Helen, Joe, in terms of the experience, what are we dealing with when we talk about the issues of hair loss? Are there just one or two, or are we talking about a myriad of
Oh,
issues there?
we're talking about a whole myriad of issues. Alopecia is just one of the hair loss situations that women are going through. Women are actually losing their hair, not only to diseases like alopecia, but at their own hand. We have a very, very disturbing disease called trichotillomania. It's a compulsive hair pulling disorder where women will pull out their own hair, one hair at a time. It's connected with a lot of different things like skin picking, nail biting, things like that. But it is very devastating because it's very embarrassing also. So they're not just willing to go to just a regular quote unquote hairstylist and have a haircut. And when you get ready to do that, and then you see these big bald spots, and they're trying to explain what happened. So we actually cater to a lot of that, and we have methods that do a good job on trying to get a healing process going where we can cover that and make them look relatively normal.
In terms of the patterns that you see, what are, obviously, I'm going to guess just because you've talked about those two, alopecia plus, and I won't even attempt to go into the name that rolled off your lips.
Yeah.
But are there other maladies, other problems that lead to baldness besides those, or are those basically the I don't want to use the term big two, but in essence, the
Well,
big two of it?
no, women are suffering from hair loss for all different types of reasons. Medications are a big, very big hair loss situation. A lot of the medications that women are prescribed have side effects to hair loss, but if it's prescribed to you for a certain reason, you have to take these medications. It's for their health. We have things like hormone replacement therapy. We have things like women being on medication for high blood pressure, stress-related situations where women are just basically losing their hair I like to call it, over the last 25 years that I've been doing this, I like to almost call it environmental. Over the last several years, we've seen so much significant in women losing hair for what we would call no apparent reason. We're not talking that they have alopecia or they have trichotillomania or they have anything. They're just basically waking up, combing out, brushing out headfuls of hair. I think it's a lot of stress-related situations. We're in a high-stress world where women are responsible for their children, and then they're off to work, and then they're back home, and then they're not getting enough sleep. They're not, doing a lot of things that they probably need to do for themselves. And as a result of it, we're seeing a lot of hair loss in people that hereditarily say that they don't have a background of hair loss, and people in the family are having full heads of hair and they don't understand what's going on. And if we refer them to see a dermatologist, a lot of times the dermatologists are coming back with the results that there's basically no reason for this. So it's probably stress related, but it doesn't make the problem any less significant. A lot of it looks like alopecia. What I'm seeing happening is that if it's going to come back, it's going to come back anyway. Treatments usually will help us depending on what the hair loss is for. Treatments usually help soften the hair. Sometimes it can bring back the follicle depending on what you have. Now, if you have something related to an alopecia, or if you're a woman who have been through chemo, a lot of times it depends on how the hair will come back or if it will come back at all. We're seeing people basically lose their hair and it's not coming back. Or sometimes we're seeing people that we can treat and we can get the hair to come back. But I think it's all in the environment.